The rain hammered against the glass walls of the restaurant like 1,000 tiny fists, but inside, the only storm that mattered was happening in the quiet corner near the window, where a tired single father sat across from his daughter trying to pretend their world wasn't falling apart. People walked past them with the easy confidence of those who belonged, while he straightened the collar of his thrift store shirt and hoped no one noticed the fraying threads. But they did. They always did. And when the waiter returned for the third time and asked if they were sure they could afford the meal they had ordered, his little girl placed her small hand on his trembling one and whispered the words that broke him in a way he hadn't been broken before. "It's okay, Daddy. We can leave." Before we go deeper into this emotional story, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of humanity to heal the things money never can. The father's name was Daniel Hayes, a man once full of ambition until life humbled him with a speed that defied logic. He used to believe stability was something he could earn with hard work. But the layoffs came, then the eviction, then the debts he never meant to create. And yet, even through all of it, his daughter Lily remained the soft, glowing center of his world. She was the reason he woke up each morning and dragged himself from one temporary job to another, the reason he walked miles to save bus fare, the reason he forced a smile even when his insides felt hollowed out. She was 8 years old and full of sunshine that life had tried, but failed, to dim. Tonight was supposed to be special. He had promised her a birthday dinner somewhere fancy, somewhere she could feel like the princess he always told her she was. He had saved tips for weeks, skipped lunches, and worked double shifts. But even with all that, this place was still a stretch. The kind of stretch where he had mentally calculated the exact price of everything before even sitting down, praying that no unexpected taxes or fees would appear on the final bill. Still, he wanted her to feel celebrated, even if just for an hour. But the judgment in the waiter's eyes, the lingering stares from wealthier diners, the tight-lipped sighs as if his presence ruined their view, it was too much. And when Lily whispered that they could leave, he felt the last thread of his pride snap. He nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat, preparing to gather his belongings and apologize for taking up space. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly have imagined, was that this small, painful moment was being watched by someone whose presence in that restaurant would be talked about for months. Adrian Knight, the billionaire CEO known for building empires without ever showing weakness. Adrian had come there seeking a few minutes of quiet between relentless meetings, his mind heavy with contracts, deadlines, and a loneliness he pretended he didn't feel. His life was sleek, polished, and enviable from the outside. But internally, it was a maze of cold boardrooms, shallow relationships, and expectations he could never escape. Wealth had given him everything except the ability to feel grounded. And in that moment, when he glanced toward the window and saw a little girl lifting her father's chin, whispering comfort not meant for anyone else to hear, something inside him paused. There was no pity in his stare, only recognition. He knew that look on the father's face, the silent war between wanting more for your child and knowing the world wasn't built to give it to you. He stood up before he could talk himself out of it, adjusting the sleeves of his tailored suit, and crossed the room toward them. Daniel noticed the expensive shoes first, then the suit, then the face he recognized from news articles and business magazines. His heart sank. Men like this didn't talk to men like him, not unless it was to ask them to. "Move aside." To Daniel's shock, Adrian didn't look down at him. Instead, he crouched slightly to be eye level with Lily, his voice soft in a way that didn't match his ruthless public persona. He said something about overhearing it was her birthday and how birthdays should always be celebrated properly. Daniel protested, his voice cracking as he insisted it wasn't necessary, but Adrian gently cut him off with a reassurance that felt startlingly genuine. He wasn't there to embarrass them, he simply wanted them to stay. What followed was surreal. The waiter's tone transformed instantly, like someone flipping a switch. The manager approached them with apologies. A new table was prepared, not in the corner but at the center of the room, under a chandelier that painted the world gold. Dishes Daniel couldn't pronounce appeared, and Lily's eyes sparkled with the wonder of someone stepping briefly into a fairy tale. Daniel tried to relax, but his mind raced with questions. Why them? Why tonight? What did this billionaire possibly gain from helping strangers? As the night unfolded, Adrian remained at the table, not as a distant benefactor, but as someone sincerely invested in the moment. He asked Lily about school, about her favorite stories, about the drawings she proudly showed him. He asked Daniel about work, not in a judgmental way, but with a curiosity that surprised him. When Daniel reluctantly admitted he was struggling, Adrian didn't look at him with disdain. Instead, he nodded like a man who understood hard roads better than he let the world believe. The dinner stretched long into the evening. With laughter Daniel hadn't heard from his daughter in months. But the real turning point came after the meal, when Lily excused herself to use the restroom. Adrian leaned forward, his voice lower, more serious. He told Daniel that he recognized something in him, something that reminded him of his own father before wealth had changed everything. He admired the way Daniel carried responsibility even when life was brutal. And then, almost casually, he offered him a job. Not charity, not a temporary fix, a real job, with benefits, stability, dignity. Daniel felt dizzy. He asked why him, why this, why now? And Adrian simply said that sometimes life puts people in front of you for a reason, and he wasn't going to ignore that reason anymore. It didn't feel real. Daniel wanted to say no, to protect himself from false hope, but something about Adrian's sincerity made it impossible. He agreed, hesitantly, cautiously, with tears threatening to escape. When Lily returned, Adrian greeted her with the warmest smile and told her he had one more surprise. Outside, waiting at the curb, was a small teddy bear wrapped in a ribbon, with her name embroidered on the paw. She hugged it like it was the most precious thing she had ever held. That night, when they stepped outside into the cool, rain-washed air, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in months. Possibility. The job started the following week, and it wasn't easy. Daniel was placed under one of Adrian's toughest managers, a woman known for expecting perfection and giving no free praise. But Daniel pushed through. Day after day he proved himself, working harder, learning faster, and showing a loyalty that impressed even the coldest supervisors. And though Adrian didn't interfere directly, he checked in occasionally with a simple nod or a quiet, "How's Lily?" That reminded Daniel this wasn't a dream. Weeks turned into months, and slowly life began to rebuild itself. The debts shrank. The stress eased. Lily grew happier, healthier, more carefree. They moved into a small but clean apartment where she finally had a room painted in her favorite colors. And Daniel, he rediscovered himself. The version of him that believed he deserved a good life returned. But it wasn't just material changes. It was the shift inside, the quiet healing that came from being seen at your lowest and lifted without judgment. He knew he would never be able to repay Adrian financially, but gratitude lived in his every action, in the way he committed to his work, in the way he raised his daughter to believe in good people. Months later, at the company's annual charity gala, Daniel stood in the crowd wearing a suit that actually fit. He scanned the room, feeling out of place but proud. When Adrian took the stage, he spoke about business, innovation, and vision. But then his tone softened, and he told a story, not naming names, about a man he met by chance, a man who reminded him what resilience truly looked like. Adrian said that success wasn't measured by profits, but by the people you helped climb their own mountains. Daniel's throat tightened. He knew the speech was about him. When their eyes met across the room, there was a quiet acknowledgement between them, not of debt or hierarchy, but of two men who, in different ways, saved each other. Because the truth was, Adrian had been as lonely as Daniel had been hopeless. And that night in the restaurant, Lily's soft whisper had broken the quiet armor around a billionaire's heart just as much as it had broken her father's sense of defeat. As the event ended, Daniel stepped outside, breathing in the cool night air. He looked at the city lights, remembering the night he almost walked out of that restaurant in shame. But instead, something extraordinary happened, something that reminded him that humanity wasn't lost, that kindness could still exist in unexpected places. And tonight, standing stronger than he had in years, he whispered into the breeze, as if speaking to the moment that had changed his life. Thank you. If this story touched your heart in any way, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps bring more stories of hope and humanity to people who need them. Before the ending, please take a moment to comment, kindness still matters. And may this story remind you that no act of compassion is ever wasted. And sometimes the smallest moments can start the greatest chapters of our lives.